Hello, welcome to Mindful Chatting. I'm Kristen, and I want to ask you something. Have you ever had a week where you feel like really focused and motivated, even clear, and just kind of on top of things? And then the next week, everything just feels so much harder for you. You're more distracted, maybe even more emotional, maybe even less motivated and more overwhelmed. And you start to think like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I just stay consistent? Well, what if I told you it's not inconsistency, it's biology? Because if you have ADHD and your brain doesn't function the same way throughout your cycle, and if you don't understand that, you'll keep trying to focus on forced consistency in a system that's not designed for it. We're going to get into this together.
Welcome to Mindful Chatting, a podcast where therapy meets real life. I'm Kristen, a therapist, business owner, and a lifelong student of what it means to fully show up in our relationships, in our work, and in our healing. Here, we unpack mental health concepts, explore mindfulness tools, and talk through the messy, beautiful, in-between moments that shape us. Whether you're a fellow clinician, a curious listener, or someone navigating your own growth, this space is for you. Let's chat.
Now, as we get into this, I want to specify I am not a doctor. I just want to talk about ADHD and hormones and really the ADHD brain. And I want to break it down really simply for you. Your menstrual cycle is driven by a lot of hormonal changes, primarily estrogen and progesterone. And here's the key thing is estrogen directly impacts dopamine, and dopamine is what ADHD brains rely on. And we rely on this for focus, motivation, task initiation, and regulation, which is all of our executive functioning skills. So when estrogen changes, which it constantly does throughout our cycle, our dopamine is going to change. And that means your executive functioning also changes as well. So, when estrogen is higher, and that's typically in the first half of your cycle, your dopamine is way more supported. So, that's where you may feel more focused, more motivated, more organized, and probably emotionally stable. And this often in that time is where you think, I'm back on track. I got this. And this is the version of me that, like, I really want to be all the time. And will think, great, this is going to be different. But as estrogen drops, especially leading into your menstrual period, dopamine drops with it. And now your brain is working with less motivation, lower focus, probably more emotional reactivity, and a lot more cognitive fatigue. So the same task that felt easier the week before is now feeling extremely overwhelming for you. And without awareness in that, you can interpret that you are failing again, which is not the case.
If you're listening to this and thinking, this is exactly what I struggle with, I want you to know that I built something specifically for you. The EF, or Executive Functioning Activation course, walks you through why task initiation feels so hard with your ADHD and how to actually get yourself moving without shame, pressure, or burnout. It's short, practical, and designed for ADHD brains, not productivity culture. If starting is your biggest barrier, this course gives you structure, language, and tools that actually work for you. You'll find the link in the show notes.
Now, this isn't just about productivity, it's also about your emotional regulation. You might notice that you're more irritable, have lower frustration tolerance, and maybe increased sensitivity, maybe even more negative thoughts. This is not just about moodiness, it's neurological and your hormonal interaction together. And this is where things kind of click for people when you understand this. Most planning systems assume you will function the same every single day, but you don't. So when you create a plan based on your high functioning week, it falls apart during your lower energy weeks. And then you think, I can't stick to anything, when really the system isn't built for your variability. So, one more thing, you are not inconsistent. You are cyclical, and ADHD amplifies that cycle for you. So, instead of trying to force consistency, you need to work with your rhythm.
Okay, quick pause.
Because you've ever found yourself rewinding this episode like 3 times because your brain just drifted, this is for you. I hear this all the time. I can focus, just not when I actually need to. And that's exactly what the focus course is about. Because here's the truth, ADHD isn't a lack of attention, it's a regulation issue, which is why some days you're locked in for hours and other days you're rereading the same sentence, wondering what just happened. So, inside my executive functioning focus course, I break this down in a way that actually makes sense for you. We go through how your attention works in your brain, your specific focus patterns, why you get distracted externally and internally, and how to actually build a system that helps you stay on track and come back when you drift. Because the goal isn't perfect focus, it's knowing how to return without spiraling. So if you're tired of blaming yourself and you just want something that actually works with your brain, I'll link the focus course in the show notes. All right, let's get back to this episode. So how do we do this? How do we work with our cycle? We first need to track our cycle. We need to bring awareness to it. I want you to start noticing when you feel focused, when you feel you have low energy, and when things feel really harder. You don't need perfection. I'm just building awareness. And this is where a lot of tracking apps can be really helpful for this because I don't know about you, but remembering to track how I felt throughout the day might just be another cognitive load that you won't be able to do. But an app that can remind me to check in, that tracks that data for me, well, gosh, that makes my whole life simpler. I'm going to add the app that I use that tracks my cycle into the show notes, which is Lively. Lively is very interesting because not only does it track your cycle, but it allows you to log symptoms. It develops patterns so that you can be more predictable and more aware when your cycle changes. And it has this simplified part of the app where you can link your partner or anyone else that you want to know so that they can understand how your cycle and mood changes at the same time as you do, which can be really helpful and beneficial to relationships. So if you're interested in understanding more about this app and how it helps you, I'll put a link in the show notes for that. Then we need to match our tasks to our energy levels. When we have a high estrogen phase, which is normally in the beginning of our cycle, usually the first 2 weeks of our cycle, we need a lot of planning. We can do a lot of content. We can do a lot of decision making within this. And then when we go into our lower estrogen phase, which is usually our last 2 weeks of our cycle, this is where we're going to focus more on administration, lighter tasks, and maintenance. Now, I don't know about you, but not every job is going to align with your cycle. But if we know when our cycle is happening and we just find it really hard and challenging, this is where we're allowed to add some grace and some flexibility to how we're responding to tasks based on our energy levels at that time. So if we're showing up to tasks and things just seem so much harder for you and you're like, what is wrong with me? If I had awareness about my cycle and my energy levels, I'm going to normalize that for myself. I'm going to give myself a little bit more grace instead of being more challenging and harder on myself because I showed up to that task a little bit differently than I normally do. And this is where we need to lower our expectations, but we need to do it a little strategically. This is the key. Not I need to push through whatever I'm feeling or whatever cycle I'm in, but I need to adjust. An adjustment may just be talking to ourselves differently. It may be showing ourselves a little bit of grace when we're showing up to tasks a little bit differently than we normally do. It could mean, what are my expectations for this task, knowing that I have lower energy or knowing that this week is going to be a little bit challenging for me? What are my non negotiables and bare minimums that I may have for myself this week that I may not have had for myself the week prior? Then we build flexible systems around our cycle. Instead of that rigid system, it breaks. It doesn't work for us. We need to be a lot more flexible. And flexibility may also be in a cognitive way. How we view our cycle, how we view our energy, how we cyclically go through things, that may have to be a little bit more flexible. And then we need to normalize the shift. We need to stop interpreting that our low energy phases are actually failures on our part. They are part of your cycle, they are part of you. And changing the way we think about that brings less shame and it brings a less stigma against our energy and how we show up to things.
If you want to understand your ADHD in a deeper way, I've created the ADHD Crash Course, and it walks you through ADHD step by step so that you can actually start understanding your brain and not shaming it. Everything's in small, doable lessons designed for your ADHD in mind. The link is in the show notes.
If this is something you've never thought about before, or you knew had something to do with it, but you just didn't really couldn't put your finger on it, this is exactly why I recommend having a simple system to track your cycle alongside your energy and your tasks. And this is where I'm creating a basic cycle and energy planner to help you start noticing these patterns and plan around them. As I work this into our pilot planning ADHD course, this link will be in the show notes if you want to be a part of that. I think a lot of people have spent years thinking that they're inconsistent, when really they've just never been taught how their brain and their body actually work together. And we need to change that. We need to change the way that we're thinking about our cycle, our ADHD, and how we manage ourselves. You don't need to become more consistent. You need to become more aware. And because once you start understanding your rhythm and how it contributes to the way you show up in your life, you stop fighting yourself and you start working with yourself again. And you start building more grace and being more flexible and more relaxed with who you show up to each day. I want to thank you for joining me. If there's any particular topics that you want to know about when it comes to your ADHD, drop them in the comments and I'll definitely do episodes about them. And as always, be gentle with your mind.
One more thing before you go, and this helps me personally staying present and grounded, which we all need, especially when your brain wants to spiral into disconnection. Me too. It's Brain FM. It's musically designed to help ADHD brains, well, really anyone's brain, focus, relax, or sleep, and I use it almost daily. If you want to try it, I've dropped my link in the show notes. And if you're looking for planning tools or ADHD-friendly resources, I'll keep a list of my favorite links in every episode.